The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. I could hear it drumming against the cracked window of my apartment, a relentless rhythm that matched the pounding in my head. My shift at St. Catherine's Hospital had ended 2 hours ago, but the exhaustion clung to me like a second skin, heavy, suffocating, impossible to shed. I peeled off my scrubs, the fabric damp with sweat and something I didn't want to identify, and tossed them into the overflowing hamper. "Mommy, I'm hungry." Lily's small voice cut through the sound of the rain. She stood in the doorway of our tiny bedroom, her blonde curls matted against her forehead, clutching the stuffed rabbit I'd found at a thrift store last month. At 4 years old, she already knew not to ask for much. That broke something in me every single day. "I know, baby. Give me 5 minutes, okay?" I forced brightness into my voice, though my bones ached with a weariness that went deeper than physical fatigue. 5 minutes to become human again. 5 minutes to pretend I wasn't drowning. The apartment smelled of mildew and the neighbors cooking, garlic and something burnt. Our building sat in the worst part of downtown, where sirens were as common as birdsong and the elevator had been broken for 6 months. But it was ours. Barely. The eviction notice taped to our door last week reminded me just how tenuous that claim was. I splashed cold water on my face, watching it swirl down the rust-stained sink. 26 years old, and I looked 40. Dark circles carved shadows beneath my eyes. My cheekbones stood out too sharply, the result of too many skipped meals so Lily could eat. When had I become this hollow version of myself? The knock came at exactly the wrong moment. Jarring, urgent, completely unlike the lazy rap of our superintendent or the hesitant tap of neighbors asking to borrow something. This was different. Commanding. The kind of knock that expected an answer. I glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. Nothing good happened at 11:47 p.m. in this neighborhood. "Stay in the bedroom, Lily," I called, my voice sharper than I intended. I saw her eyes widen before she disappeared behind the door, and guilt twisted in my stomach. But fear was stronger. The knocking came again, harder this time. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept beside the door. A laughable defense, but it was all I had, and peered through the peephole. A man stood in the hallway, but the fisheye lens distorted him into something almost monstrous. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing what looked like an expensive suit, completely incongruous with our crumbling building. Behind him, I could make out another figure, larger, watching the stairwell. "I need help." His voice carried through the door, accented, Italian maybe, and rough with something I recognized from my years working in the ER, pain. "Please, my children. Children." The word sliced through my caution like a scalpel. I'd seen too much, lost too much to ignore that word. Against every instinct of self-preservation, I unlocked the door. The man nearly collapsed into the doorframe, and I saw it immediately. The blood. It soaked through his white shirt, dark and spreading, originating from somewhere beneath his left arm. His face was pale, carved from marble and just as cold, except for his eyes. Dark eyes that burned with something between desperation and command. But what stopped my heart were the bundles he carried. 2 infant car seats, one in each arm despite the obvious agony the movement caused him. Inside, swaddled in blankets that probably cost more than my monthly rent, 2 babies slept. Identical, perfect, impossibly small. He swayed, and I moved without thinking, grabbing his elbow to steady him. His skin was cold, clammy, shock. He was going into shock. Inside, now, my nurse training overrode everything else. I helped him stumble into my apartment, kicking the door shut behind us. The second man, his guard, I realized, started to follow, but the injured man raised one hand in a sharp gesture that stopped him cold. "Marco stays outside," he said, his voice brooking no argument, despite the way his breath came in shallow gasps. I didn't have time to question it. I cleared the couch with one sweep of my arm, sending Lily's coloring books and my nursing textbooks cascading to the floor. He lowered himself carefully, never once jostling the car seats. Even in agony, his first priority was those babies. "Lily, bring me my bag," I shouted toward the bedroom. "The red one under my bed." The man's gaze tracked around the apartment, taking in the water-stained ceiling, the duct-taped cushions, the single photograph I'd managed to frame, Lily on her 3rd birthday, blowing out candles on a grocery store cupcake. When his eyes returned to mine, I saw something flicker in them: assessment, calculation, a predator's awareness even in weakness. "You're a nurse," he stated. Not a question. "Yes." "Now stop talking and let me see where you're bleeding from." I'd already grabbed scissors from my bag, cutting away his shirt without ceremony. The fabric was silk, I noted distantly. Hand-stitched. The kind of garment that cost thousands. The wound was a through-and-through gunshot, missing the lung by centimeters. Lucky. Impossibly lucky. But he was losing blood fast, and the exit wound in his back looked worse than the entry. "You need a hospital," I said, already packing the wound with gauze from my kit. "This is beyond—" "No hospital." His hand shot out, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. "No police, no questions." I should have pushed him out the door then. Should have called 911 and protected my daughter from whatever darkness this man carried with him. But those babies, they couldn't have been more than 2 months old. Slept on, oblivious to the blood and danger surrounding them. "Who shot you?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. His laugh was bitter, cut short by a wince of pain, someone who forgot the price of betrayal. He released my wrist, his fingers leaving pale imprints on my skin. "Can you help me or not?" I looked at Lily, who stood frozen in the doorway, clutching my medical bag. Her eyes were huge, terrified. Then I looked at the babies, so small and vulnerable. Finally, I looked at him, this stranger who'd brought violence to my doorstep, who smelled of expensive cologne and gunpowder, whose presence filled my shabby apartment like smoke. "I can stabilize you," I heard myself say. "But you need antibiotics, proper sutures, monitoring for infection. I have a doctor who will handle that. Tomorrow. Tonight I just need to not bleed to death in front of my sons." Something raw flickered across his face, so fast I almost missed it. Vulnerability. Fear. Love. It was the love that decided me. I worked quickly, efficiently, falling into the rhythm of emergency care. Apply pressure. Clean the wound. Pack with hemostatic gauze, temporary sutures, bandage tightly. He barely flinched, though I knew the pain must have been excruciating. Instead, he watched me with those dark, unreadable eyes, and I felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. "What's your name?" he asked, as I wrapped the final bandage around his torso. I hesitated. Giving him my name felt like handing over something I couldn't get back, but he'd already seen where I lived. Seen my daughter, invaded every corner of my carefully guarded privacy. "Emma," I said finally. "Emma Reeves. Emma." He repeated it slowly, like he was tasting the syllables. "I am Dante. Dante Salvatore." The name meant nothing to me then. I was too focused on checking his pulse, monitoring his color, making sure he wasn't about to crash despite my makeshift treatment. But I felt him watching me, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "The babies," I said, needing to break the silence. "Their mother. Dead." The word was flat, final. 6 weeks ago. Complications from the birth. My chest tightened. I knew that grief. Had lived it myself when Lily's father walked out 3 weeks after she was born. Different circumstances, same devastating loneliness. One of the babies stirred, making a small mewling sound. Without thinking, I moved to the car seat, unbuckling the tiny boy and lifting him carefully. He was warm and perfect, smelling of baby powder and milk. My arms remembered this weight, this precious fragility. "His name is Luca," Dante said softly. "His brother is Matteo. They're beautiful." The words caught in my throat. I rocked Luca gently, and he settled back into sleep, his miniature fist curling against my collarbone. When I looked up, Dante was watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Hunger, maybe, or recognition. Something that made me feel suddenly, acutely aware of how thin my tank top was. How exposed I was in my own home with this dangerous stranger. "You're good with him," he observed. "You have experience." "I have a daughter, Lily. She's 4, the father. Gone." I made my voice hard, unwilling to revisit that particular wound. It's just us. Something shifted in the air between us then. Some unspoken understanding. We were both alone, both struggling, both doing whatever it took to protect the children who depended on us, except his silk shirts and armed guards suggested his struggles looked very different from mine. "I need to go," he said, but made no move to stand. Blood had already started seeping through the fresh bandages, but I find myself temporarily incapacitated. "You can't go anywhere like this. You'll rip the sutures before you make it down the stairs. Then what do you suggest?" There was amusement in his voice now, threading through the pain. Like this was all some elaborate game and he was curious to see how I'd play it. I didn't have a good answer. Let him stay? Insane. Send him away to possibly die in the street? Unconscionable. Call the authorities despite his explicit warning? Dangerous for reasons I was beginning to understand. The decision was made for me when Matteo woke with a sharp, demanding cry. Then Luca joined in, and suddenly my tiny apartment was filled with the sound of hungry babies who didn't care about gunshots or danger or the surreal situation unfolding around them. "They need to be fed," Dante said unnecessarily, trying and failing to push himself upright. The movement sent fresh blood blooming across the bandage, and I pushed him back down with one hand. "Don't move." "Where's their formula?" "In the bag. The black one." He gestured weakly toward a designer diaper bag I'd somehow missed, sitting by the door like it belonged in my world of hand-me-downs and clearance racks. I found bottles already prepared, expensive formula, everything perfectly organized. Someone had packed this bag with care, anticipating needs, preparing for contingencies. The realization sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't spontaneous. Whatever had happened tonight, Dante had known it was coming. "How did you end up here?" I asked, settling on the floor with both babies, propping bottles with practiced ease. "My building, my floor, my door." His smile was slight, edged with something sharp. "Coincidence." "Liar." The word surprised us both. I never spoke that bluntly, never challenged anyone, had learned long ago that keeping my head down was how you survived, but exhaustion and adrenaline had stripped away my usual filters. Instead of anger, I saw approval flash in his eyes. "Perhaps not entirely coincidence," he conceded. "Marco was watching this area. When the situation occurred, this was the closest safe location." Safe. I tasted the word, found it bitter. Nothing about this is safe. Safer than the alternatives. His voice had gone cold again, reminding me that beneath the pain and the blood was someone accustomed to violence. Someone whose presence in my home might have just painted a target on my door. Lily appeared in the doorway again, drawn by the crying babies despite her fear. She stared at Dante with wide eyes, then at the infants in my arms, her expression somewhere between wonder and uncertainty. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said gently. "This is Mr. Salvatore. He needed help, and we're going to help him, right?" She nodded slowly, her thumb creeping toward her mouth, a habit she'd almost broken. "The babies are crying. They were hungry. But look, they're better now," I demonstrated. And indeed, both Luca and Matteo were drinking contentedly, their small hands waving in the air. "Can I touch one?" Lily asked, her natural curiosity overcoming her fear. I looked at Dante, seeking permission I wasn't sure he'd grant. A man like this, surrounded by guards and secrets, trusting a stranger's child to touch his sons, but he nodded, just once. Gently. Lily crept forward, reaching out one small finger to stroke Matteo's cheek. Her face transformed, lighting up with wonder. "He's so soft, like my bunny." Despite everything, the blood, the danger, the absolute insanity of the situation, I felt Dante smile, really smile. It changed his face completely, softening the harsh lines, revealing someone younger than I'd initially thought. Mid-30s maybe, too young to have such old eyes. "What do you do, Emma Reeves?" he asked suddenly. "Besides save foolish men who show up bleeding at your door?" "I'm a nursing assistant at St. Catherine's. Night shift mostly. The pay is terrible, but the hours work with Lily's schedule. I didn't mention the eviction notice, the empty refrigerator, the scholarship I'd abandoned because I couldn't afford childcare and tuition simultaneously. Pride was a luxury I'd learned to live without, but some dignities I still clung to, and Lily's father provides nothing." The question should have angered me, but his tone held genuine curiosity rather than judgment. He provides distance, which honestly is better than what he provided when he was here. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on his sons as they finished their bottles. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made the hair on my arm stand up. Children deserve protection, loyalty. A father who would burn the world before allowing harm to reach them. His eyes lifted to mine, and I saw something burning in their depths. Conviction, obsession. Anything less is betrayal. I didn't know what to say to that, so I focused on burping the babies. Their small bodies warm and trusting against my shoulder. Outside, the rain continued its assault, and somewhere in the building, someone was shouting. Normal sounds of my normal life. Except nothing about tonight was normal. "You should rest," I said finally. "You've lost a lot of blood, and shock is... I know the symptoms of shock, Kara." The endearment slipped out naturally, intimately, and I felt my face heat. But I cannot rest until arrangements are made. Arrangements? For safety, for protection, for ensuring tonight's mistakes aren't repeated. He reached for a phone I hadn't noticed, sleek and expensive, and I heard him speaking rapid Italian to whoever answered. The conversation was brief, but I caught enough to understand. Men were coming. A car was being sent. Things were being handled. When he hung up, he looked at me for a long moment. Really looked, like he was memorizing every detail, my tangled hair, my cheap clothes, my bare feet on the worn carpet. I felt exposed, seen in a way that terrified and thrilled me simultaneously. "You will be compensated for tonight," he said, generously. "I don't want your money." The words came out more forcefully than I intended. "I helped because you needed help. Because your babies needed help. That's what decent people do." His expression shifted, something almost like surprise crossing his features. "Decent people," he repeated slowly. "When was the last time you encountered such a creature, Emma? In this building, in this city, in your life?" The accuracy of his assessment stung. I couldn't remember the last time someone had helped me without expecting something in return. Couldn't remember the last time I'd felt safe rather than simply surviving. 15 minutes, he continued, and I realized he was talking about the car. "Then I will be gone, and you can return to your life. Pretend tonight never happened. Forget you ever met Dante Salvatore." But even as he said it, I knew forgetting was impossible. This man, this moment, had already carved itself into my memory like a scar. Permanent, indelible, marking the before and after of my existence. The knock came exactly 15 minutes later. This time, I opened the door to find 3 men in dark suits, moving with the coordinated precision of soldiers. They didn't ask questions, didn't acknowledge me beyond brief nods. They simply entered, assessed Dante's condition, and prepared to move him. "The woman helped me," Dante said as they lifted him carefully. His voice was weaker now, the adrenaline clearly fading. "She is to be protected. Marco, you understand. The largest guard." Marco, presumably, nodded once. "See, boss." "Boss." The word settled over me like ash. They carried him toward the door, the babies secure in their car seats, and I thought that would be the end of it. A strange, violent chapter closed. But at the threshold, Dante stopped them with a gesture. "Emma." He looked back at me, and in his eyes I saw something that made my breath catch. Promise. Warning. Possession. We will see each other again, soon. It wasn't a question or a polite farewell. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the absolute certainty of someone accustomed to bending reality to his will. Then they were gone, leaving me standing in my apartment that suddenly felt emptier than before. I looked down and saw blood on my hands, my clothes, my floor. Evidence of the night's impossible events. Lily tugged at my shirt. "Mommy? Are the babies okay?" "Yes, baby. They're okay." I picked her up, holding her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "Everything's okay." But as I said it, I knew I was lying. Nothing would be okay again. Whatever I'd stepped into tonight, whatever debt I'd incurred or attention I'd attracted, it wouldn't simply disappear with the morning light. On the table where Dante had sat, I found an envelope, thick, expensive paper. Inside, more cash than I'd seen in my entire life, along with a card bearing a single phone number and 3 words in elegant script: "Call if needed." I should have thrown it away. Should have scrubbed every trace of this night from my home and my memory. Should have protected my daughter from whatever darkness came with knowing a man like Dante Salvatore. Instead, I tucked the card into my pocket, where it burned like a promise. Or a threat. 3 days passed before I heard from him again. 3 days of jumping at every sound, checking the peephole obsessively, scrubbing bloodstains from my floor until my hands cracked and bled. 3 days of telling myself it was over, that Dante Salvatore had vanished back into whatever dark world he inhabited, taking his danger and his money and his burning eyes with him. I was wrong. The flowers arrived first, 24 white roses in a crystal vase that probably cost more than my rent. No card, but I knew. The delivery man had looked terrified handing them over, practically running back to his truck. I'd considered throwing them out, but they were so beautiful, so achingly perfect in my dingy apartment, that I couldn't bring myself to destroy them. Lily thought they were magic. The second delivery came that evening. Groceries, not just any groceries. Organic produce, premium cuts of meat, imported cheeses, fresh bread from the bakery downtown that I'd only ever walked past, inhaling the scent and imagining enough food to fill my empty cabinets and refrigerator completely. The third delivery arrived as I was leaving for my shift. A car seat. Top of the line, brand new, still in its box. Because of course he'd noticed that Lily's was held together with duct tape and prayers. I should have been grateful. Should have simply accepted these gifts as payment for services rendered. But each delivery felt like something else, threads being woven around me, soft as silk, and just as binding. "Miss Reeves?" I spun around in the hospital parking lot, my keys clenched between my fingers like a weapon. Marco stood beside a black SUV with tinted windows, looking exactly like what he was. Dangerous, professional, utterly out of place among the rusted sedans and economy cars. "Mr. Salvatore requests your presence," he said, his accent thick, his expression neutral. "I'm working a shift. I can't just—" "It has been arranged. Your supervisor has been informed you have a family emergency." He opened the rear door, waiting with the patience of someone who knew refusal wasn't actually an option. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The moment I should run, should scream, should do anything except get into that car. But curiosity warred with fear. And beneath both was something I didn't want to examine too closely, the memory of Dante's eyes on mine. The way he'd said my name like a prayer or a curse. 10 minutes, I heard myself say. "I'll give him 10 minutes, then I'm going to work." Marco's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Of course, miss." The SUV smelled of leather and something darker. Gun oil, maybe. The windows were so heavily tinted that the city disappeared, leaving me floating in artificial darkness. We drove for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, moving through neighborhoods that grew progressively more expensive, until we pulled up to a building that looked like it belonged in a European capital, rather than our gritty downtown. "This way." Marco guided me through a private entrance, past security that melted away at his approach, into an elevator with mirrors and gold fixtures. We rose in silence, my reflection staring back at me, pale, nervous, wearing scrubs that had seen better days. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse apartment that stole my breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city, the lights spreading out like fallen stars. The furniture was modern and minimal, clearly chosen by someone with exquisite taste and unlimited resources. Art hung on the walls, real art, the kind I'd only seen in museums. Everything was pristine, perfect, utterly inhuman in its beauty, except for the baby toys scattered across the expensive rug. Emma. Dante emerged from a hallway, and I barely recognized him. Gone was the blood and pain and desperation. He wore dark slacks and a white shirt, tailored perfectly to his frame. The sleeves rolled up to reveal bandages on his ribs. His hair was damp, like he'd just showered, and he moved with only the slightest hint of stiffness. 3 days. He'd been shot 3 days ago and he looked like this. "You clean up nice," I said, because saying what I was actually thinking, that he was beautiful in a way that felt dangerous, seemed monumentally stupid. His smile was quick, genuine. "As do you, though I confess I prefer you without the bloodstains. Most people do." I stayed near the elevator, unwilling to venture deeper into this space that smelled of money and power. "Marco said you wanted to see me. I'm here. What do you want? Direct. I appreciate that." He moved to a bar cart, poured amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses. "Whiskey?" "I'm working in an hour." "Then you have time for 1 drink." He crossed the space between us, invading my personal bubble with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Up close, I could see the shadows under his eyes, the tightness around his mouth that spoke of pain he was carefully masking. "Please, Emma. Sit. I promise I don't bite." The lie was transparent, but I found myself accepting the glass, sinking into a chair that probably cost more than my car. The whiskey burned going down, warming me from the inside. "The gifts," I started, "were inadequate, I know. But it's difficult to find appropriate thank you presents for the woman who saved your life at midnight while wearing pajamas covered in cartoon cats." Heat flooded my face. Of course he'd noticed my ridiculous sleep shirt. "You didn't need to send anything. I told you I don't want payment, and I told you that you would be compensated." His voice hardened slightly, revealing the steel beneath the charm. "What you want, Kara, is not always relevant to what you will receive." The words should have angered me, but instead they sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. This man was used to being obeyed, to arranging the world according to his desires, and somehow I'd become part of that world. "The babies," I said, desperate to shift focus. "Are they okay? Did you see a real doctor?" His expression softened immediately. "They are perfect. Healthy. Growing too fast, if I'm honest. And yes, I saw a doctor, several actually, all of whom were horrified by your battlefield medicine but admitted it likely saved my life." "Battlefield medicine," I repeated. "That's one way to describe it. You did well under pressure, better than many trained professionals I've encountered." He settled into the chair across from me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woodsy and expensive that made me think of dark forests and older magics. "I find myself curious about you, Emma Reeves. Single mother, nursing assistant, living in a building that should have been condemned years ago. How does someone like you end up in such circumstances?" "Someone like me?" The question came out sharp, educated, capable, clearly intelligent. His gaze traveled over me, assessing. "You could work anywhere, do anything, yet you choose the night shift at a public hospital in the worst part of the city. Choice implies options. I work where I can get hired, where the schedule works with Lily's needs, where they don't ask too many questions about gaps in my resume." I took another sip of whiskey, letting it fuel my courage. "Besides, I could ask you the same thing. How does someone end up getting shot while holding twin babies? That seems like a spectacular lapse in judgment." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Marco shifted behind me, and I realized belatedly that insulting Dante Salvatore was probably not conducive to a long, healthy life. But Dante laughed, a real laugh, surprised and delighted. "You're either very brave or very foolish, Emma. I haven't decided which. Foolish, probably. Brave people don't end up where I am." "Where you are," he repeated softly, "is in my home, drinking my whiskey, speaking to me with more honesty than anyone has dared in years. I find it refreshing." The air between us thickened, charged with something I couldn't name. His eyes held mine, dark and intense, and I felt pinned by that gaze like a butterfly to a board, examined, studied, claimed. A cry broke the moment. Matteo, if I was guessing correctly, his wail carrying from somewhere deeper in the apartment. Dante was on his feet immediately, and I saw him wince as the movement pulled at his injury. "Let me," I said, standing. "You shouldn't be. I'm fine. You're injured." And stubborn, apparently. I followed the sound of crying down a hallway lined with more expensive art, into a nursery that looked like something from a magazine. 2 cribs, a changing table, Shelves lined with books and toys, everything new, everything perfect, everything screaming of a father trying desperately to provide for his children. Matteo was red-faced and furious, his tiny fists punching the air. I lifted him carefully, checking his diaper, feeling his temperature, running through the diagnostic checklist that had become second nature. "Just hungry," I announced, spotting the bottles warming in a professional-grade sterilizer. "And probably lonely. Babies this age don't like being alone." The night nurse stepped out. "She'll be back." "You have a night nurse?" Of course he did. Men like Dante Salvatore didn't change diapers at 3 a.m. 2 nurses rotating shifts, a pediatrician on call, a nanny for daytime hours. He rattled off the list like he was defending himself. Everything they need, except their father. The words slipped out before I could stop them, and I saw his jaw tighten. "Their father," he said coldly, "is ensuring they grow up safe, protected. In a world that wants them dead simply for bearing my name, forgive me if I prioritize their survival over my presence at every feeding." The bitterness in his voice caught me off guard. I settled into the rocking chair, offering Matteo his bottle, and watched Dante lean against the doorframe. A man who commanded armies but couldn't figure out how to comfort his own child. "They don't know about survival yet," I said gently. "They just know they're alone, that no one's holding them." Something cracked in his expression. He crossed to Luca's crib, lifting his son with a tenderness that made my chest ache. The baby settled immediately against his father's chest, making small, contented sounds. We sat like that for a while, feeding the twins in comfortable silence. And I let myself imagine, just for a moment, that this was normal. That we were normal. A man and a woman caring for children, sharing this quiet intimacy that parents know. "Their mother," I ventured. Did you love her?" His laugh was bitter. "I barely knew her. An arrangement between families, duty, not desire. But she gave me my sons before she left this world, and for that, I will honor her memory always. That's sad. That's reality. Love is a luxury in my world, Emma. A weakness that gets exploited." I looked at him holding Luca, at the way his large hand cradled his son's tiny head, and thought he was lying. This man loved fiercely, completely, with an intensity that would consume anything in its path. "You should go," he said suddenly. "Your shift starts soon." Right. Reality. I had a job, a daughter, a life that didn't include sitting in penthouses with dangerous men and their beautiful babies. I stood, passing Matteo back to Dante, our hands brushing in the exchange. The contact sent electricity up my arm, and from the way his eyes darkened, he felt it too. "Thank you," he said, "for coming. He gestured vaguely at the babies, the moment, everything unspoken between us. "Don't send more gifts," I replied. "Please, I can't. It's too much. I will send what I deem appropriate." That iron certainty again, the voice of someone who'd never learned to ask permission. "And Emma, you will see me again. Soon." It was the same promise he'd made 3 nights ago, but this time, I didn't want to run from it. The phone call came during Lily's bedtime story. I'd been reading about princesses and dragons, her warm weight pressed against my side, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, probably a telemarketer, or worse, a debt collector, but something made me answer. "Emma." Dante's voice was tight, controlled in a way that immediately raised my alarms. "I need you." 3 words. That's all it took to unravel every resolution I'd made to stay away from him. "What happened? Are the babies—" "The twins are fine. I am less so." A pause, then quieter. "Please. I would not ask if there was another option." 20 minutes later, Marco was at my door, and I was explaining to Mrs. Chen from next door that I had an emergency, pressing $40 I couldn't spare into her hand to watch Lily. The guilt of leaving my daughter gnawed at me, but Dante's voice had carried something I recognized from my years in the ER. Genuine fear. The SUV took us to a different building this time, older, tucked away in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Marco led me through a service entrance, up narrow stairs, his hand hovering near his jacket in a way that told me he was armed. "What's going on?" I demanded. "Boss needs you," was all he said, but his jaw was tight, his movements more cautious than before. The apartment was smaller than the penthouse, sparsely furnished. A safe house, I realized. Somewhere to hide when hiding became necessary. And there was Dante, sitting on the edge of a bed, his shirt discarded, fresh blood seeping through bandages I recognized as my handiwork from days ago. "What did you do?" I was across the room before I'd decided to move, my hands already assessing the damage. The sutures had torn, probably from overexertion, and the wound showed early signs of infection. There was a situation. It required physical intervention. Physical intervention. I repeated his clinical words while cleaning the wound with supplies Marco silently provided. "You got into a fight less than a week after being shot. Are you trying to die?" "I was trying to protect my sons." His voice went deadly quiet. "Someone attempted to breach the penthouse security. They failed, but not before." He stopped, jaw clenched. "I handled it." The implication hung between us. He'd killed someone, maybe multiple someones, and he'd torn his wound doing it. "You have people for that," I said, forcing my hands to remain steady as I cleaned the infected tissue. This would hurt, and I had no anesthetic to offer. "Guards, Marco, an entire arsenal probably." "Why would you?" "Because they are my sons." The words came out like a whip crack. "My blood, my responsibility. I will not cower in safety while others fight my battles." I understood that kind of love, the fierce, irrational certainty that you would burn the world before letting harm touch your child. I'd felt it the night Lily's father raised his hand to her, felt it when I'd packed our bags and left with nothing but the clothes on our backs. "This is going to hurt," I warned, preparing the antiseptic. "I know." His hand gripped the bed frame, knuckles white. "Do it." I worked as gently as possible, but I saw the pain ripple through him, saw sweat bead on his forehead. He never made a sound, just breathed through it with the discipline of someone intimately familiar with pain. "You need real antibiotics," I said, applying fresh bandages. "And rest. Actual rest, not whatever you're calling rest while you fight off assassins." They weren't assassins. They were thieves. Idiots who thought I was vulnerable. His hand shot out, catching my wrist as I reached for more gauze. "Look at me, Emma." I did, and wished I hadn't. His eyes were too intense, too knowing, seeing things in me I'd tried to hide even from myself. "Why do you help me?" he asked. "You gain nothing. You risk everything. Your safety, your daughter's safety. Yet you come when I call. Why?" "Because I was lonely. Because his babies needed someone. Because when he looked at me, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. Because I was apparently an idiot with a savior complex and terrible survival instincts. Someone has to keep you alive." I said instead. "Your sons need their father. Is that the only reason?" His thumb traced circles on my inner wrist, directly over my pulse. Could he feel it racing? "Because I think there's something else, something you're afraid to admit. I should go." But I didn't move. Couldn't move. Trapped by his proximity and the heat of his skin, and the dangerous pull I felt toward this man who represented everything I should avoid. "Stay." Not a command, despite his usual tone. A request. Almost a plea. "Just for a while. The twins are sleeping, and I find I don't want to be alone tonight." It was the vulnerability that undid me. This powerful, dangerous man admitting he needed company, needed comfort, needed something I could actually provide. 1 hour, I conceded. "Then I have to get back to Lily." He released my wrist, and I immediately missed the contact. I settled into the chair across from the bed, maintaining distance because getting closer felt catastrophic. "Tell me about her," Dante said. "Your daughter." So I did. I told him about Lily's obsession with dinosaurs, about how she arranged her stuffed animals by size every night before bed, about the way she hummed while coloring. Small details that probably bored him, but he listened like I was revealing state secrets. "She sounds remarkable," he said, when I'd run out of stories. "Like her mother." "I'm not remarkable. I'm tired and broke and barely keeping my head above water. You're a survivor. That's more remarkable than you know." He shifted on the bed, wincing. Most people in your situation would have crumbled, given up, but you fight. Every day you fight for your daughter, for your future. I respect that. The praise shouldn't have mattered, but it bloomed warm in my chest. When was the last time anyone had acknowledged how hard I worked, how much I sacrificed? What about you? I turned the conversation back to safer ground. Tell me about Luca and Matteo. Besides the obvious, that they're beautiful and you'd kill for them. His expression softened immediately. Luca is louder, more demanding. He knows what he wants and makes his displeasure known when he doesn't get it. Matteo is quieter, more observant. He watches everything with these serious eyes, like he's taking notes for later. They're 2 months old. They can't... You'd be surprised. I see it already. Their personalities. He pulled out his phone, showed me photos. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. The twins sleeping, eating, being held by their father. In every photo, Dante's face showed an emotion I rarely saw on him. Unguarded joy. You're a good father, I said quietly. I'm trying to be. Most days I feel like I'm failing. The admission cost him something. Their mother, she didn't plan to die. Didn't plan to leave me alone with 2 infants and no idea how to care for them. Some days I look at them and think about all the ways I'll inevitably disappoint them. Welcome to parenthood. That feeling never goes away. I smiled sadly. Every night I worry I'm not enough. That Lily deserves more than hand-me-down clothes and a stressed mother who can barely afford to feed her. But we do what we can, and we hope it's enough. You are more than enough for your daughter. I see how she looks at you, like you hung the moon. His voice dropped lower. I wonder what it would be like to be looked at that way by someone who chooses you rather than needs you. The air shifted, charged with something dangerous. I should have left then, should have recognized the warning signs. But I stayed, held by his gaze, by the intimacy of the moment, by the connection forming between us like spider silk, delicate, strong, and impossible to see until you were already caught. Emma. He said my name like a confession. I think about you. More than I should. More than is wise. Don't. The word came out breathless. We can't. This isn't, I know. You have a life. A daughter. Complications I have no right to introduce. He stood, crossed to where I sat, and I felt my heart hammer against my ribs, but I find I don't care about right. I care about what I want. And I want. A phone rang, shattering the moment. Marco's voice came from the other room, urgent and clipped. Dante's expression shifted instantly from vulnerable to lethal, all trace of softness vanishing. What is it? He called. Marco appeared in the doorway, his face grim. We have a problem. Someone's been asking questions about the other night. About the woman who helped you. The temperature plummeted. Dante's eyes met mine, and I saw fear flash through them. Not for himself, but for me. What kind of questions? His voice was cold, controlled. The kind that means they know she exists. They know where she lives. My blood turned to ice. Lily. I was moving before conscious thought, grabbing my bag, my phone, terror clawing up my throat. Someone knew. Someone was asking about me. Someone might hurt my daughter because I'd made the catastrophic mistake of helping a man I didn't understand. Marco, take her. Now. Dante was already on his phone, barking orders in Italian. I'm sending men to her building, to her apartment. No one touches the child. No one even looks at her wrong. I need to get to her. And you will. But not alone. Not unprotected. He gripped my shoulders, forcing me to meet his eyes. Emma, listen to me. I will not let anything happen to your daughter. Do you understand? I will burn this entire city before I allow her to be harmed because of me. The certainty in his voice should have comforted me. Instead, it terrified me, because I realized the full scope of what I'd stumbled into. This wasn't just a dangerous man. This was someone with the power to make good on those threats, someone whose world operated by rules I didn't understand. Why? The question tore from me. Why do you care? You don't know us. Don't owe us anything. Because you saved my sons when you had every reason to slam the door in my face. Because you looked at me bleeding on your couch and saw someone who needed help rather than someone to fear. His hands tightened on my shoulders. Because when I look at you, I see something I thought I'd lost the right to want, and I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. Not yet. The words were a promise and a threat. But you will be. And so will Lily. I will keep you both safe, Emma, whether you want me to or not. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a haze of fear and fury. Dante hadn't been exaggerating. Within hours of that night, my building had transformed into a fortress. Men in dark suits appeared on every corner, in the lobby, outside my apartment door. Mrs. Chen whispered about the nice security company that had suddenly taken an interest in our crumbling building, but I knew better. They were Dante's men, watching, protecting, imprisoning. I should have been grateful. Someone had tried to break into my apartment 3 days after that conversation. Tried and failed, because Marco had been stationed outside my door. The would-be intruder had disappeared, and I'd learned not to ask what disappeared meant in Dante's world, but gratitude warred with resentment. I hadn't asked for this protection, this cage disguised as safety. Every time I left for work, guards followed. Every time I took Lily to the park, men in expensive suits watched from a distance. My life was no longer my own. "Mommy, why is that man always there?" Lily asked one morning, pointing at Marco through the window. "He's a friend, making sure we're safe." "Safe from what?" "From your mother's terrible decisions," I thought, but didn't say. "Nothing, baby, just being careful." The lie tasted bitter, but what was I supposed to tell her? That I'd saved a mafia boss and now we were trapped in his orbit, pulled by a gravity I couldn't escape. I avoided Dante's calls, all 12 of them, ignored the texts asking about Lily, about me, about whether we needed anything. I threw away the gifts that kept arriving. Toys for Lily, gourmet meals, a new winter coat I'd been eyeing but couldn't afford. Each one felt like a chain being wrapped around us, beautiful and suffocating. But on the 14th day, he showed up at the hospital. I was halfway through my shift when I saw him in the corridor, flanked by Marco and another guard. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than my annual salary, and despite the controlled chaos of the ER, people parted for him instinctively. Predators recognized predators, even in human form. "What are you doing here?" I hissed, pulling him into an empty examination room. The guards stayed outside, which somehow made it worse, more intimate, more dangerous. "You've been avoiding me," he said it matter-of-factly, like I'd committed some grievous offense. "I've been living my life. You should try it. Living without controlling every variable." "Someone tried to kill you, Emma. Forgive me for taking that seriously." "One person. One time. And your men stopped him. I'm grateful, truly, but I can't live like this. Lily can't grow up surrounded by armed guards and—" I gestured at him, at everything he represented. "This, whatever this is me keeping you alive." His voice went cold, hard. "This is me ensuring my enemies don't use you to hurt me. Do you know what they would do if they captured you? If they realized you matter to me? I don't matter to you. I'm just some random woman who helped you once." He moved faster than I expected, closing the distance between us, caging me against the examination table. His hands gripped the metal on either side of my hips, and suddenly I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the heat radiating from his body. "Random," he repeated, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "You think I station my best men outside random apartments, send gifts to random women, lie awake at night thinking about random people? Dante, I dream about you, Emma, about your hands on my skin, about the way you looked holding my sons, about what it would feel like to strip away every wall you've built and make you admit you feel this too." My breath caught. I did feel it. This pull between us, magnetic and terrifying. But acknowledging it meant surrendering to something I couldn't control, and control was the only thing keeping me afloat. "I have a daughter," I said desperately. "A life that doesn't include danger and violence, and your life already includes danger. Poverty is dangerous. That building you live in is dangerous. Working night shifts in this neighborhood is dangerous." His hand lifted, cupping my face with surprising gentleness. "I'm offering you something better, safety, security. A life where you don't have to choose between feeding your daughter and paying rent. In exchange for what? Becoming your mistress? Your kept woman? His jaw tightened. In exchange for allowing me to care for you. Both of you. Is that so terrible? Yes, whispered the part of me that had learned independence the hard way, that had clawed my way up from nothing, and refused to be dependent on anyone again, especially a man. But another part, the tired, scared, lonely part, wondered what it would feel like to let someone else carry the weight for a while. I need to get back to work, I said, ducking under his arm, putting blessed distance between us. Emma. He caught my wrist, and I felt that electric current again, that connection I couldn't explain. Come to dinner, tomorrow night. Bring Lily. Let me show you what I'm offering before you refuse it. I don't need to see your penthouse again to know. Not the penthouse. Somewhere else. Somewhere. He paused, and I saw vulnerability flash across his features. Somewhere that matters to me, please. The please undid me. This man who commanded armies and ordered deaths, asking rather than demanding. How was I supposed to resist that? One dinner, I conceded. Then you back off. Let us live our lives. His smile was slow, predatory. One dinner. But I promise you, Kara, you won't want me to back off after. He left, and I tried to convince myself I'd made a mistake. Tried and failed, because anticipation was already building in my chest, warm and terrifying. The next evening, Marco picked us up in a different vehicle, an SUV but less intimidating than usual. Lily was excited, chattering about the adventure as we drove through the city toward the coast. Where are we going? I asked. Boss's house, Marco said. The real one. We pulled up to a property that took my breath away. Not a penthouse or a safe house, but an actual home. A sprawling villa overlooking the ocean, with gardens and stone paths and a warmth that the other properties lacked. This was where Dante lived, really lived. He met us at the door, and I barely recognized him. Jeans, a simple sweater, no suit, no armor of wealth, just a man, holding his sons, looking almost nervous. Welcome, he said, and his eyes held a question. Will you give me this chance? Lily hid behind my legs, suddenly shy, but Dante crouched down to her level, carefully, because his injury still pained him, though he tried to hide it. You must be Lily. Your mother has told me so much about you. I'm Dante, and these are my sons, Luca and Matteo. They're too little to play yet, but I have a garden with a swing. Would you like to see? She nodded, curiosity overcoming fear, and I watched my daughter take the hand of a man who'd killed people, who commanded an empire built on violence. But all she saw was someone kind, someone who spoke to her like she mattered. The evening unfolded like something from a dream. Dinner on the terrace, the ocean a dark mirror below. Food I couldn't pronounce, but that tasted like heaven. Lily laughing as she pushed Luca and Matteo in their swing, gentle and careful. Dante watching all of us with an expression I couldn't decipher, longing, maybe, or hope. Why are you doing this? I asked when Lily was distracted, playing with toys that had mysteriously appeared. Because I want you to see, this life I'm offering, it's not just penthouses and guards. It's this. Peace, family. A place where Lily can run and play without fear, where you can rest without worrying about eviction notices. I can't be bought, Dante. I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to show you what could be ours. Together. He turned to face me fully, and the intensity in his eyes made my heart stutter. I know it's fast. I know it's insane. But from the moment you opened that door, bleeding heart and terrified eyes, I knew. You were mine. You just didn't know it yet. That's not how it works. You don't just claim people. In my world, I do. But I'm asking, Emma, asking you to consider this, to let me protect you, provide for you, care for you the way you deserve. His hand found mine, threading our fingers together. I'm not a good man. I've done terrible things, and I'll do more before I'm done. But I would never harm you, never let anyone harm you. You and Lily would be sacred, untouchable. I wanted to say no, wanted to run back to my tiny apartment and my simple life, and pretend this hadn't happened. But watching Lily laugh, really laugh, in a way I hadn't heard in months, watching her play in safety and comfort. I felt my resolve cracking. What about love? The question slipped out before I could stop it. You said it's a weakness in your world. I said it's a luxury. I didn't say it was impossible. His thumb traced circles on my palm. I'm already halfway there, Emma. Every time I see you, every time you challenge me or save me or look at my sons like they're precious, I fall a little more. Give me time, and I'll give you everything. I don't want everything. I just want... What? Tell me what you want, and it's yours. Safety. Security. Someone to share the burden. To not be alone anymore. To feel seen, desired, protected. To watch my daughter grow up without fear. I want Lily to be happy, I whispered. Then stay. Let me make her happy. Let me make you both happy. He pulled me closer, and I let him. Let myself sink into the warmth of his body. 1 month. Give me 1 month to prove I can be what you need. If you still want to leave after that, I'll let you go. No strings, no consequences. But give me a chance, Kara. Please. I looked at Lily, giggling as she showed Matteo a flower. Looked at this beautiful house, this peaceful space. Looked at Dante, dangerous and deadly and offering me the world. 1 month, I agreed, and felt the last of my resistance shatter. But if this goes wrong, it won't. I swear to you, Emma, I will spend every day of that month showing you exactly how right this is. He kissed me then, soft and claiming. And I tasted promise on his lips, promise and possession, and something that felt dangerously like belonging. I was falling into an abyss, and I couldn't even bring myself to scream. The month passed like a fever dream. Dante kept his word with a precision that should have terrified me. He didn't rush, didn't push. Instead, he seduced us both, Lily and me. With a patience I hadn't known men like him possessed, we moved into the villa after the first week. Not permanently, he assured me. Just until the situation with his enemies was resolved. But my apartment lease expired, and suddenly there was no reason to go back to that water-stained ceiling and broken elevator. Mrs. Chen cried when we left, but the envelope of cash I pressed into her hands, courtesy of Dante, softened the goodbye. Lily bloomed in the ocean air. She had her own room, painted purple at her request, filled with books and toys and everything I'd never been able to give her. She adored the twins, appointed herself their protector, sang to them in her off-key voice that somehow always made them smile. Watching her finally be a child instead of a worried shadow of one cracked something open in my chest. And Dante. He was everywhere and nowhere, giving us space but making his presence felt. Morning coffee waiting before my shifts. Lily's favorite snacks appearing in the pantry. Fresh flowers on the kitchen table. Small touches that showed he was paying attention, learning us, making room in his dangerous life for our ordinary needs. But it was the nights that undid me. After Lily fell asleep, after the twins were fed and settled, we'd sit on the terrace overlooking the ocean. Sometimes we talked about his childhood in Sicily, about my abandoned dreams of becoming a full nurse, about everything and nothing. Sometimes we just existed in comfortable silence, and I learned that Dante Salvatore, stripped of his armor and violence, was someone I could love. Was already loving, if I was honest with myself. 3 weeks in, everything changed. I'd just gotten home from a shift when I found Dante in his office, surrounded by maps and photographs, his expression carved from ice. Marco stood beside him, speaking rapid Italian, and I caught enough words to understand. Betrayal, family, revenge. What happened? I asked from the doorway. Dante's eyes snapped to mine, and I saw rage there, cold, calculated rage that made my skin prickle. The man who shot me. We found him. He's been hiding in one of my own properties, protected by someone I trusted. Who? My cousin, Roberto. The name came out like poison. He arranged everything. The attack, the theft, the attempt on you and Lily, all of it. So he could take my territory, my business, my sons. My blood turned to ice. The twins are safe. I've tripled security. No one gets near this house without going through 20 armed men. He stood, crossing to me, gripping my shoulders. But I need to handle this, Emma, tonight. And I need to know you and Lily are protected while I'm gone. Gone where? What are you going to do? His silence was answer enough. He was going to kill his cousin. Going to end the threat permanently, the way men in his world always did. Don't look at me like that, he said quietly. Like you're afraid of me. I'm not afraid. And I wasn't, which should have terrified me. I'm afraid for you. What if it's a trap? What if... Then Marco takes you and Lily somewhere safe. Switzerland, maybe. New identities, new lives, enough money to never worry again. He cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. I've prepared for every contingency, Kara. But this ends tonight. I won't live looking over my shoulder, wondering when my own blood will strike again. Let me come with you. Absolutely not. I'm a nurse. If someone gets hurt, they die. This isn't a hospital, Emma. This is war. His voice gentled slightly. Stay here. Keep Lily safe. Keep my son safe. That's how you help me. By being the reason I have to come back alive. He kissed me then, deep and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of me. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. I love you, he whispered. I know it's fast. I know it's insane, but I love you. Both of you. You've given me something I thought I'd lost. A reason beyond revenge and duty. When this is over, I'm going to ask you properly. Ring, proposal, the whole ceremony. But I needed you to know, in case... Don't. I pressed my fingers to his lips. Don't say in case. You're coming back. You have to come back. Then tell me you love me too. Give me something to fight for beyond survival. The words stuck in my throat, trapped behind years of self-preservation and fear. But looking at this man, this dangerous, complicated, impossibly tender man, I couldn't hold them back anymore. I love you, I breathed. God help me, Dante. But I love you. His smile was brilliant, transforming his face completely. Then I'll see you in a few hours, amore mio. Count on it. He left, taking Marco and a dozen other men, and I was alone with the twins and Lily and guards stationed at every entrance. The house felt too big, too quiet, filled with shadows that seemed to whisper warnings. I tried to distract myself, feeding the babies, reading to Lily, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from spiraling into catastrophic scenarios. But every sound made me jump. Every hour that passed without word felt like an eternity. It was almost midnight when I heard vehicles approaching. Too many vehicles. My heart seized, and I grabbed the phone Dante had given me, ready to call the emergency number he'd programmed. But then I saw him. Dante emerged from the lead SUV, alive and whole, though his shirt was torn and blood, not his, I prayed, spattered his face. He moved with purpose toward the house, and I met him at the door, my legs shaking with relief. It's done, he said simply. Roberto won't threaten anyone again. The men who helped him have been dealt with. My territory is secure. I should have asked for details, should have demanded to know exactly what dealt with meant, but I didn't care. He was alive. He'd come back just as he promised. I threw myself into his arms, and he caught me, holding tight despite the violence he'd just committed. I was so scared, I admitted against his neck. I know. I'm sorry. But it had to be done. He pulled back, studying my face. Can you accept this part of me, Emma? The violence, the darkness, because it won't go away. This is who I am, what I do. I'll keep it away from you and Lily as much as possible, but it will always be there. I thought about it, really thought about it. About the man who'd bled on my couch, who loved his sons with ferocious devotion, who'd given me and Lily safety and comfort and belonging, about the killer who'd just eliminated threats to his family without hesitation. They were the same person, and somehow, impossibly, I loved both versions. I can accept it, I said. As long as you promise to always come home. To us. To this, always. He kissed me again, slower this time, full of promise. Now let me clean up. Then we need to talk about the future, our future. An hour later, we sat on the terrace under stars that looked fake in their brilliance. Dante had showered, changed, Looked almost normal, except for the cuts on his knuckles and the exhaustion in his eyes. "I meant what I said earlier," he began. "About asking properly. Dante, let me finish." He pulled a box from his pocket, velvet, expensive, containing a ring that caught the moonlight and shattered it into rainbows. "Emma Reeves, you saved my life twice. Once when you stopped the bleeding, once when you showed me life could be more than survival and revenge. You gave me a reason to build instead of destroy, to hope instead of just endure." His voice roughened with emotion. "I know I'm not the safe choice. I'm not the good choice. But I'm the choice that will protect you and Lily with everything I have. That will give you both the life you deserve, that will love you until my last breath and beyond." He slid from the chair to one knee, and my vision blurred with tears. "Marry me. Be my wife, my partner, the mother of my sons and your beautiful daughter. Let me spend the rest of my life proving you didn't make a mistake when you opened that door. I should have hesitated, should have considered the implications, the dangers, the complete insanity of marrying a mafia boss after 1 month. But love wasn't logical, and safety wasn't guaranteed anywhere. At least with Dante, I'd be loved, protected, cherished." "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on my finger, a perfect fit, because of course he'd somehow gotten my size, and kissed me with a passion that promised forever. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine. "You won't regret this," he vowed. I know. And surprisingly, I did know. This man would move mountains for me, would burn cities for our children. That kind of devotion was worth the risk. We married 3 weeks later, in a small ceremony at the villa. Just us, the children, a handful of Dante's most trusted men, and a priest who asked no questions. Lily served as flower girl, taking her duties seriously, scattering petals with careful precision. The twins watched from their carriers, dressed in tiny suits that made them look impossibly adorable. When Dante said his vows, promising to love, protect, and honor me in this life and whatever came after, I believed him completely, and when I promised the same, I meant every word. Our life together wasn't perfect. Dante's world occasionally intruded. Late-night phone calls, sudden security changes, men who came to the house with blood on their hands and desperation in their eyes. But he kept his promise, shielding Lily and me from the worst of it, creating a bubble of normalcy within the chaos. Lily thrived, starting school at a private academy where she made friends and discovered a love for science. The twins grew, Luca loud and demanding, Matteo quiet and observant, just as their father predicted. And me. I finished my nursing degree, started working at a private clinic Dante helped fund, finally achieving the dream I'd abandoned years ago. Sometimes, lying in bed with Dante's arms wrapped around me, I thought about that rainy night when everything changed, about the knock on my door that could have been my death sentence but instead became my salvation, about the choice to help a bleeding stranger that led to this beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect life. "What are you thinking about?" Dante murmured against my hair. That I'm glad I answered the door. His arms tightened around me. "So am I, amore. Every single day, so am I." Outside, the ocean whispered against the shore, and inside, our children slept safely. The man who'd arrived at my door holding twins and bleeding from a gunshot now held me instead, his heart beating steady and strong beneath my palm. I'd found him shot and desperate, not knowing he was an Italian mafia boss, not knowing my life was about to change forever. But I'd learned something important. Sometimes the most dangerous choices lead to the safest harbors. Sometimes the darkness holds the brightest light. And sometimes, love finds you in the most unexpected places. Bleeding on your doorstep, holding his children, offering you the world if you're brave enough to take it. I'd been brave enough, and I'd never looked back.